Alright, test, go, gone. Oh, that'll be perfect. Alright. Getting all the stuff set up.
You could even, like, put it in there.
I used to have a mic stand, but it broke.
Okay.
And I'm not going to buy another one. Alright, so let's start out discussing your interest first.
Okay.
Like, how did you become interested in, or where does your interest in wine come from? Or is it just an interest in alcohol?
So the interest in wine started primarily not with wine, but with beer.
Okay.
I originally had set out, I fell in love with beer, the qualities of beer, the richness, the
history.
effervescence, probably saying that wrong, but
Sure.
the aromas, the different tastes between beer. Then getting diagnosed, having celiacs, realized I'm never going to be able to drink as much beer as I thought I was going to.
Which is, forgive me how hilarious and ironic that is.
Yeah. And you're just like, you know.
Now, if you don't mind, explain what is celiacs.
Okay.
And for the hipster haters and the hipsters themselves, what is that? What does celiacs
in short,
mean?
So celiacs is a autoimmune disease in which your body fights back against gluten, which is a protein within wheat, barley, and rye.
Mm-hmm.
Sees it as an enemy and sends white blood cells to essentially attack your intestines,
Mm-hmm.
which causes inflammation, gut issues. Can have multiple characteristics affecting the body. There's a lot of research that it affects with the gut biome, which can lead to a number of different things that you could read into about it.
For all intents and purposes, celiac disease is essentially a disorder.
Yeah, it's an autoimmune disease, but in research that I've been doing, I don't know if I would necessarily call it a disease. Exactly, but there's definitely people with different severities. I wouldn't say I have a gluten,
like you're not deathly allergic
Yeah.
to gluten.
I'm not
It makes your day
intolerant.
very uncomfortable.
Or like you have people who eat certain things are like, oh, I feel bloated and this and that.
Mm-hmm.
But I know if I ingest some type of heavily induced gluten, so like your bread, pizzas, things of those natures, I will severely have intestinal pain and issues. So I do know you can call it whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. I just know I get sick and feel like crap.
Mm-hmm.
So what that led me down is, okay, now what can I do now that I have this issue? I had recently taken out as the wine buyer for
The store
that we both were working at for a number of years.
Mm-hmm.
And I was introduced to wine by a bunch of my distributors, giving you free samples, and I really kind of fell in love with wine after that point. I drank a little bit of wine with my parents,
Mm-hmm.
big into wine, but they're primarily Napa people,
Mm-hmm.
which means Cabernet
Yeah, I was about to say,
Chardonnay.
Could you possibly explain the culture of wine in Northern California for me? Or for us?
Yeah, I mean, the culture of Napa wine is, in the 70s, Napa took like a very heavy prestige in the fact that they had beat out some of the French winemakers in terms of Cabernet and Chardonnay. There was a big, essentially a festival contest where the best of the best come, and there's a blind contest, blind tasting,
Mm-hmm.
which means you're going to have a panel of judges. Every judge will describe the wine, taste the wine, give their notes, and give a point system of characteristics and evaluate that wine. And there was a number of different wines from California, specifically Napa Valley, that took or tested better than some of your Bordeaux, which is a area within France that is heavily into Cabernets, but they are Cabernet blends with Merlot, and then in the realm of Chardonnay, which Napa is also very well known for. You have areas in France, in Burgundy, more specifically Chablis, in which they do Chardonnay as well, and it's like a very completely different style.
What region of France are these places? I'm not very familiar with the geography of France.
If you're looking on a map, Bordeaux's on your left. It's next to the ocean.
Mm-hmm. The
Burgundy,
Atlantic?
yeah.
Mm.
Burgundy is off to your east,
Mm-hmm.
a little bit northern east, and very cold, and that's where you're growing Pinot Noir or Chardonnay.
Okay.
So in Napa, your Chardonnay, there's two theories. You either use American oak, French oak. Some people use Hungarian, but predominantly American or French.
That makes sense.
The heavier amount of oak use, you'll get more. It's what's called malolactic. There's a process called malolactic fermentation, in which all red wines go through, some white wines go through as well. It's the reaction of malolactic acid converting into lactic acid or lactose acid, lactic acid, in which those are releasing those buttery, creamy textures. So when somebody describes, as an example, Chardonnay, and you're saying, hey, this has a very creamy texture to it, and you can taste not so much butter or like that aspect, but it's softer, it's creamier to the taste, as well as to like the aroma. You'll get those main characteristics as well as some of the fruit, but sometimes that oak is way too prevalent, and that's sometimes all you can smell. So something that's very popular.
What is the significance of the oak in the process of brewing them?
It's for Chardonnay, it's used to soften a wine. So when
in the barrel, or?
Yeah, so like in your barrel, small batch barrels, big batch barrels. The smaller barrel, the more use of oak, the more surface area the wine has to the oak, the stronger the oak. Flavoring.
So even the amount that you have in each barrel can have an effect on the flavor of the wine.
Yes, absolutely. That's the whole thing of small batch.
This is good.
And we'll get to what you're ingesting here in a sec. But essentially, just to kind of get back to the whole Napa thing is Napa Chardonnays, something very well known is Rombauer, and it's a very signature. Is it the best? Absolutely not. But it's what people think of as a Napa California Chardonnay. Very creamy, buttery, fruit characteristics there. Maybe a green apple, some pear, maybe a little bit of citrus. These are all aromas that your brain will kind of pick up and associate. Now, is there actually citrus and pear put in the wine? Absolutely not. It's 100% just the grapes.
So these are purely just natural flavors that occur when you put the grapes and the grape juice through this process.
Yeah, so essentially every wine gives off different aromas. Your brain can essentially only pick up, so many things, and so I forget the actual name of it, but essentially when you smell something, you have an association, and your brain puts things in categories, and that's just the way your brain works. So this smells like apples. I smelled apples, therefore
that's what your brain associates the flavor with,
and it's just the processing.
Yeah.
So with Napa, became very popular. They started producing very good cabs, and you had this influx in the 80s going into the 90s, and now big, bold wines.
They have vineyards out there.
Yeah. You have Napa Valley itself encompass maybe, I don't know off the top of my head.
But it's a very large industry.
Yeah, but you have little subcategories. So you have, it's called the AVA, American Viticultural area, and that would be like St. Helena or Yountville or Oakville. These are all smaller categories within the larger Napa Valley category.
The network of what
of
Napa
region,
Valley,
essentially.
what the region is itself.
Exactly. And so a lot of that, because Napa cabs sell very well, they sell very well overseas, in particularly China. It's held as a...
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So China has this really big thing of prestige and like high valued in American Cabernets. That's
a business topic, but that is very.
But essentially, yes, it's very much when you think of it, the bougie, high class people. They're charging you X amount, very high dollars for wine tastings. It's for people who have money. Now you cannot have money, so go to Napa, but it's designed that way. But that's kind of Napa in a nutshell. But for me,
and then I was just curious to provide a little bit of context of your knowledge base. And then,
so like my knowledge base, I drank a bunch of wine over the course of a year. I learned what I liked, what I didn't like. I did my own research. I realized that after I had left, that I really didn't know anything. I then started taking classes at San Diego State through their certification program. Their continuation program for their extended studies, where you could just kind of apply and do more of a certificate program than a degree.
Yeah, and you migrated down here from Northern California.
Yeah, and so I've been doing that. That's introduced me to a lot more wines, which will kind of bring us to what we're going to discuss here in a second. I recently, completed the Quartermaster Sommelier's introduction test. What that means is the Court of Sommeliers is probably one of the most well-known organizations within the United States. A sommelier is a person with a wealth of knowledge within wine that can categorize loads of information about any region within on Earth, essentially, and be able to describe a varietal, characteristics of that varietal. And the goal of a sommelier is to really be able to give a customer within a restaurant or business, wherever they're performing their activities or their duties, is provide them with a service so that they can have a great experience. So say you were to come into my restaurant, you ask to see the sommelier, you're looking to get a bottle of wine. Okay, so I'm going to come over to you, I'm going to ask you, hey, great to see you, are we celebrating anything, what is the occasion, we'll have a little bit of...
Like a guide.
Yeah,
telling helping you get where you're trying to go.
Exactly. I'm going to ask you certain questions. What are we eating? Is for everyone at the table, what are we doing? And from there, okay, we're going, and I'm having a big, thick, like, cut of steak. Maybe you're going to a very high-end restaurant, and you're just getting that steak itself. And, I want to have a wine that goes really well with this. Well, there's, like, a number of things. You can go domestic, you can go international. Another terms that people use is Old World versus New World.
And I'm assuming European versus American?
Yes and no. So it is... Old World is primarily going to be France, Germany, Austria, Italy, Spain, Portugal, kind of all those countries mainly in Europe.
Is wine at all part of the culture in the Scandinavian countries?
No.
Is it part of the culture in England?
Yes, but that's only because... Trade, and they kind of turned Bordeaux, the region of Bordeaux, into what it is during a long war.
That Western French
region. All the wars and whatnot, and they took over with the Dutch and turned... Essentially, the Bordeaux area was all swamplands, and then they built aqueducts and then kind of drained it and became this fertile soil great for growing wine.
Mm-hmm.
These are all things I've learned.
Yeah, that's
that a normal person should never have to know.
I mean, No, but that's why one person learns. That's why you have doctors. Not everybody can be a doctor, and that's why you have them.
Yeah, exactly.
You gotta have somebody that's good at it.
Yeah, so kind of fast forward to what we're doing now. I'm kind of in a mission trying to figure out what I'm trying to do with all this wealth of knowledge, continue to learn. I currently am working for a winery in San Diego, and a great passion that I get while working there is being able to introduce people into new concepts, new wines that maybe they never would have tried, or a concept that to be able to express. And it kind of goes back to the sommelier. I want to create and make the best experience I can, and I want to be able to educate you so that you can go forth and make an educated decision later on in life. So kind of, it's a quick example. Some key terms. We're gonna try a bottle of wine I've brought. It's from Alsace, which is a region within France that borders Germany. They tend to do a lot more acidic wines, lower in alcohol. You have a lot of Rieslings, Gewürztraminers, Muscat, Pinot Gris. Some parts can grow Pinot Noir, but the cool thing with Alsace is that they're allowed to put the name of the varietal on the bottle. France, and this is another conversation for another day, but France has very specific laws within each of their wine growing regions, and you can only
Are those laws determined by the region itself?
Yes.
Or are they determined... Okay, so these are...
self-induced regions, as well as
the regions have autonomy and control over how they do them.
Yes, and government-sanctioned laws, essentially, by France itself, that France government says you can only do so much.
Yeah.
And this goes back hundreds and hundreds of years ago, that a lot of these laws were set, and they have not changed.
Wow. So it's truly part of their culture and part of what they bring to the table in terms of there's a market for French wine.
Yeah, France wine, the prestige is there because it's always been there.
Does the region, like the climate of the region, have a lot to do with?
Very much so. For what you can grow, it's why you can grow Cab in one area, and you grow Pinot in one area. Cooler climate, you have more of a continental climate, which means very hot summers, very cold winters. In Bordeaux versus Burgundy, more of a maritime climate where coastal conditions apply. In Alsace, you have what's called the rain shadow effect, which essentially you have a large mountain that blocks all the shitty weather, and so you can have much better growing conditions. And this is throughout the world. But one thing I want to go back to is the old world is the new world. So going back, your new world essentially is everything. Think of old world as people as the conquerors, and new world as the people who got conquered. Because you can look at it as a history of the world. Wherever anyone wants to go conquer or fight a war, people like to get drunk, and you need wine to feed your men. And so if we're gonna start a civilization, well, my men need alcohol. Well, what's a great source? Alcohol, growing wine, boom. So that's going to be Australia, South Africa, South America, specifically Argentina.
South America, I'm familiar with.
Yeah, specifically South America,
like or within Patagonia region.
That is one area.
Yeah.
So Argentina, you're going to use like Mendoza, which is mainly Malbec. As you drop up to Chile, they grow Cabernet, some Chardonnay. As you go forward, smaller regions will kind of produce, but nothing really notable. Mexico grows some stuff in the Valley of Guadalupe, but they haven't really hit like prestige that a lot of people know about. But they are a growing region. And then going up to the United States and all the way up into Canada. Canada produces something called an ice wine, but that's a conversation for another day. But all those are different regions. Okay. So,
so what are we doing today?
So before we kind of jump into the wine, I want to kind of go over some key concepts that will allow me to describe what we're doing much easier and to kind of address for everyone else. And we'll kind of address the bottle,
and then you brought the samples in order to provide context.
Yeah, context. So where to start? Okay, so the concepts. Yeah, so you examples, have so the way you describe the wine, there's certain things you're going to use. You're going to use words like tannins. Tannins are part of majority of red wine. These are things that are coming from the oak. These are things coming from the grape skins. A lot of tannins. Well, describe tannin is the dryness aspect of when you drink a Cabernet.
So, does that not come from the alcohol itself, or
no,
is that an actual aspect?
Yeah, it has nothing to do with alcohol. So tannins come from wood, come from stems, come from the grape skins themselves. A lot of it comes from the grape skins. So if you ever eat a grape, like a red grape,
just by itself,
you'll notice that your mouth kind of gets a little dry.
That's getting into the liquid itself.
That is the tan, and it's the skins. It's not the juice inside; it's the skin.
It's the skin.
So the tannins dries that out of your mouth. Think about if you have like a tea bag you let it sit for a while, and then you drink that tea, and you're like, oh, and you're like all the moisture's gone. That's tannins.
Okay.
The next concept, the next two concepts would be a little bit more prevalent with the wine, because we have the white wine, is acidity. Acidity, if you bite into a lemon and just have pure lemon juice, and your face kind of suckers, but then your glands salivate, and it's like, oh, I want more.
Yeah.
So if you have a glass of wine, and you're trying to describe the acidity, well, does your mouth water, and are you like, I really want more? Then you probably have a nice high level of acidity. That also applies to red wine as well.
So these are like dials.
Yeah.
That you play with.
Yeah. And then you also have sweetness. Best way to describe it. So I run into this issue all the time with customers is I want a sweet wine. Okay, and a lot of my customers are not the most wine educated, but they don't really have to be. I get a lot of...
But everybody likes
millennials. Yeah, I get a lot of millennials. I get a lot of older people in their 50s. I get people all in their 80s. So you have a wide range, and not everyone knows how to describe the texture, and that's kind of my job, to kind of help play the detective to figure out what you're want.
Yeah.
So the sweetness, you think of like simple syrup and water.
Yeah, where it's grape juice. It's Welch's.
Yeah. And that's the easiest way to describe and drink that. That is sweetness.
Yeah.
Now, if I give you a wine and you think it's sweet, does it taste like this?
Yeah.
No. Well, then it's not sweet.
No.
There's no residual sugar within the wine. Because you have dry, off-dry, sweet, demi-sweet, and whatnot. But another thing you would use is maybe it's not sweet, but there's a lot of fruit characteristic in the wine. So a lot of New World wines, much more ripe, more sugar, more alcohol,
and that
more
has
fruit
to be because
and when you
of the
pick
climate,
it later,
huh?
yeah, very much so.
Okay.
When you pick it later, it'd be more ripe, more fruity. Sometimes you can describe the characteristic of the fruit. And I have a tasting guide here that we will kind of go through.
We'll go over it and discuss it.
And so, for the quartermaster sommeliers, you have, it's called the detective tasting format. A master sommelier will be able to look at a wine, smell the wine, then taste the wine, and then, in theory, using the deductive tasting format, be able to, within reason, give you 3 varietals possibilities, and hopefully come to a conclusion of the varietals true nature. Now, is this always correct? No. Masters get stumped all the time. There's lots of wines that when broken down are very similar, but every wine has its own kind of characteristic.
In terms of consensus,
yeah,
and that's where I think, because there's a lot of stuff like if you look at music theory, you're thinking about decibels, and you're breaking down everything by numbers. With this, it almost seems like you're taking something subjective as taste and trying really hard to scientifically break it down. How
Yes
long
and
does
no.
it take, or I should ask, how long did it take to develop these things? Are you familiar, or?
Off the top of my head, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
You could definitely look that up
Mm-hmm.
through the courts. Kind of, their website's really good.
Mm-hmm.
But it is a subjective, and yet there's also objective source material.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll kind of run through it real quick, and then I kind of did a quick breakdown, and we'll kind of go through this wine here,
Mm-hmm.
and then we'll go through it.
Mm-hmm.
We'll just see, as a person who's not very educated
Not at
into the understanding of how to smell wine, drink wine, we'll go through it.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to tell me what you smell, what you taste. Then we'll go through what I taste, what I smell, things I'm looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll go through based off a general guideline of characteristics. If I'm looking for this wine, these are the characteristics that stand out the most. Not always for everyone, but these are the things that stand out the most to help you identify when you're practicing. So, like I said, in the beginning of the masters, they look at a sight. So you're looking at clarity. Is the wine clear? Is it hazy? Is there sediment in there? Is there still residual yeast? Sometimes we call that, and I'm blinking out, but it'll come back to me, because that we're talking.
Yeah.
But of the lees. So you use a term called the lees, which is that residual yeast that kind of stays in.
Yeah.
What is the concentration of the color? Is it pale? Is it medium? Is it deep? What is the color? Is it a white wine, red wine? Very easy to identify. And then within those, is it kind of a straw color? Is it a gold color? Is it very light and almost white? With reds, is it a dark ruby? Is it a garnet looking color? Is it more of a brick color of like an orange? Or is it kind of more of a darker bluish purple, like on that violet spectrum?
There's different hues that you're looking for depending on.
And that's all coming indications. What I'm doing the test is grape skins and grape varieties. You go with, like I said, secondary characteristics. Is there variation within the rim?
What does that mean?
So when I tilt my glass down, and usually you're going to do it over a white paper. So like the wine we have today is more of a light gold color. I see no rim variation. The concentration is medium. I would say medium. There's no signs of gas. There's no bubbles. So we know that.
It's not a sparkling wine.
It's not a sparkling wine, and there's no signs of secondary fermentation that happen in the bottle.
Would you describe secondary? Okay, I have another question about that as well. But would you describe the rim as just the edge of where the wine touches the glass?
Yeah.
Is that what you mean?
So, and I have some pictures I can show you.
Sure.
That going through my schooling, they have provided to me.
Mm-hmm.
So, with red wine, sometimes it's a little easier. We'll just use the red wine because I have it available. You'll kind of see it's a little harder. So something that's pale, something that's moderate, something that's deep. You're going to have more deep coloration from the bottom going towards the top.
So this is like a scale of multipliers.
Yeah.
Where it can
Like,
be that purple, but it can also be more pale.
Yeah. So like if I'm holding up a glass of wine, like maybe a glass of Syrah, and it's so dark I can't see my hand behind it, or mild I can kind of see versus very pale. I could definitely see my fingers, and that's the best way to describe it.
Okay. So that is the rim.
Yes and no. So the rim, you could have, say it's a little bit more red garnet, and then as it lays down flat, you'll start to see maybe more of an orange rim. So maybe that's signs of aging, or varietal.
All right.
So to kind of go back, and we'll kind of speed through a little bit.
Yeah.
So essentially you would go through all that. Then you have your nose. Does it smell clean or is it faulty? So in wine, sometimes there are wine faults. This could be from UV damage. This could be from cork taint, which smells like a very particular smell. Is it oxidized? Does it smell very nutty?
Is that what the nutty?
Sometimes, yeah.
Is oxidation?
Yeah.
Okay.
And with the oxidation in white wines, when they age, they'll turn more of a dark color with just general.
Because you can have different types of things oxidizing. Like, for example, iron oxidizing, turning more of a reddish color,
right.
And then like something like copper oxidizing, it turns more of a greenish color.
Right.
What is there a specific metal or something that it's reacting to with?
No, it's just
getting
sediment.
oxidated.
Yeah, so it's a sediment. So like with red wines, you're losing sediment within the wine and losing pigment, and so it becomes more of an orange brick color. So you can look at it. If I look at it, so if you give me a glass of wine and I'm looking at it, okay, so I kind of look it down. There's a rim variation, kind of a little orange, kind of bricky. I'm like, okay. Before I've even smelt it, I know it could be one or two things. It's either going to be Italian varietal, maybe Sangiovese, Nebbiolo, would probably be my first two guess, or it's a wine with some age. It's either developed, it's either aged, or it's developing, essentially, for a number of years. So we look at faults, and sometimes some faults are meant. So like Brett is something kind of more of a barnyard. Sometimes it's desired in certain wines, sometimes it's not, and your winemaker kind of makes that decision. The intensity, is it delicate? It's very light. It's not very noticeable. Is it moderate? Is it very powerful? You get a lot of aroma coming, and that can be all different things. So kind of go back to the age assessment, go into the color. Is it useful, developing, vigorous? And then we move to the fruit, which gets interesting and more of a subjective. A lot of these things are definitely objective. You can tell certain things. Is it color, alcohol, things like that. Those are all objective things.
There's an objective number and a qualitative, or quantitative, I should say, measurement for what that is.
Yeah, and so with your fruit characteristics, these are subjective things. Things that are easy to break down, and then you can sub-break things down in a white wine. Is there citrus? Is there an apple or pear? So a tree fruit. Are you going to a stone or a pitted fruit? These would be your your peaches.
Oh wait,
your plums.
So these are
different fruits.
These are fruits that
fruit aromas
that you smell, but are not involved at all in the making. So this goes back to what you were talking about previously.
So to kind of just demonstrate this point, and it kind of feeds into the varietal that we have here. So on one thing I have the skin or the rind of an orange. You could smell it. A good trick to trying to learn how to smell certain things within wine is getting the things that are supposed to be in the wine that you're supposed to smell.
That way you can lock in mentally what things are
So
smelling.
like if I ask you, how can you describe an orange peel? Or, well, and you kind of go from there of how geeky, I guess, and how detailed you are. Versus,
I'm sure having a thesaurus would really help.
Yeah.
I can only imagine trying to describe things, especially olfactory things.
And then we have a little bit, so that is a fresh orange, and then the next thing I'm going to give you is more of a ripe peach. And a yellow peach. Not a white peach, but a yellow peach that's ripe.
Right. So that is another variation. You can get that type of flavor as well.
And so you would, which kind of leads us into the next category, is the characteristic of that fruit. Is it ripe? Is it fresh? Is it tart? Is it baked? In a pie? It's stewed. Have you been, kind of more of a
it's broken down over time with heat.
Yeah, is it more of a dried? Like, I have dried cranberries over here, which have a different smell to them. Is it bruised? Is it jammy? Jammy is exactly what it is. Strawberry jam, preserves.
Okay, yeah, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's
these are characteristics.
It has a process characteristic.
Yes. These
the
are characteristics
flavors that
you
you
would
get.
say out of maybe like a Zinfandel. It's kind of a little jammy.
Say that one more time.
Zinfandel?
Zinfandel?
Yeah, Zinfandel is
Zinfandel.
it's a red wine.
Okay.
You also have non-fruit characteristics, and with those non-fruit characteristics, you have things like are floral, very like blossoms, flowers, things like that of those nature. Vegetable, kind of green vegetable, so you have things called pyrazines, which are chemical compounds within certain red wines like Cabernet, Cab Franc, Cabernet or Sauv Blanc. Smells like green bell pepper, green
Interesting.
not habanero. Habanero.
Jalapeno?
Jalapeno.
Oh, okay.
There we go.
Oh wow! So there
So,
are
like,
wines that have
yeah.
more of a spicy flavor.
Yeah.
How do you spell it? What is the one?
We'll get into all
Okay.
later on.
Here, give me.
The more
I'm gonna grab
subjective.
All right.
Okay. So we're describing the vegetable,
Mm-hmm.
and so also you have herbal.
Mm-hmm.
So, is it some type of spice that you're smelling in terms of? Are you smelling rosemary? Are you smelling dill? Are you smelling tarragon? Things like that, of that nature. Maybe not a specific herb, but you know what a fresh herbs smell like.
Yeah.
Is there
And these are all possibilities in the chemistry of the wine.
Yeah. Is there some type of spice? Could be, and you can describe that as you will. An animal kind of smell, barnyard. These are all things you kind of generally kind of understand. Petrol, it's kind of a gasoline smell, or a field book, fresh tennis balls.
Okay. So that off-gassing scent you get from like
Yeah.
octane or something like that.
Yeah, I fucking love it.
Okay, that's good.
You have
That's
other
good to
things,
keep in mind.
earth, and minerality and wood are the last couple of things we'll talk about, and then we'll get into the wine, and then we can use the palate aspects after that.
So what does earthy mean? Like, what does that really?
So, earthy, and these are kind of the things they describe it in. It's kind of pretentious sometimes, but forest floor, these are just screams off the deductive tasting. Is it forest floor smelling, compost, mushrooms, potting soil? So if you were to smell potting soil, if you were to smell mushrooms, are you going to smell forest floor is kind of a very vague term, but the way I try to describe it is if you're not smelling fruit, if it's not fruit dominant. So we have a wine at the winery that is a Cabernet Franc from the South Coast, specifically northern San Diego County. There is some fruit there, slight pyrazine vegetable, but it has a very earthy tone to it. The aroma does not, to me, describe as a fruit, but more something else. And maybe it's much easier to say an earthy, lighter tone than to just try to describe the fruit. And it's, again, as we talked about, it's subjective, but it's trying to assess something within the wine's composition.
And there's only so many ways you could really.
Yeah.
I don't think we have the technology to truly diagnose wine.
No, and everything's so subjective, and it's a generalization to just be able to describe a subject to another person so that they can understand what you're talking about. Now, the next thing kind of comes more for white wine. Does it have minerality to it? Is it wet stone? Does it taste like lime chalk, slate, flint? These are all things that I still struggle with. I do have some more European wines that tend to have more of these characteristics because it's the climate, the word...
The water?
Yeah. There's a word we use in the wine industry. It's called terroir. Terroir is a French word meaning essentially the soil, the environment, the location, the microclimates. These are all things that factor into a wine. And why you could have
That's
different
one
wines.
word that means all that?
Yeah.
French is so crazy.
It is. And then the last thing we'll describe and discuss before we can, because I'm getting a little thirsty, so I think we're going to have to break into
let's quench your thirst.
Yeah, is wood characteristics.
Okay.
Very prominent within most wines. You have new oak, gives you a lot of these oaky characteristics, and I can describe that here in a sec. Versus, so new, very predominant, neutral or old. The characteristics more soften the wine a little bit, but the characteristics of the oak and their flavor do not impart into your wine.
Okay.
You also have stainless steel, which you're not getting anything, which some white wines specifically only do.
Okay.
And then you have the two big guys is it French or American? French, much lighter, softer, where American a little heavier in nature.
Heavier in
The
terms
aroma.
of
The aroma of the oak.
the strength
and
of the
certain characteristics of what the oak will...
So these are different types of trees essentially that affect the wine differently.
Yeah. And I have it, but I will have to get back to you on where I put it. Let's see. Well, I'll find that eventually.
That's okay.
But anywho,
What am I looking for in this wine right here?
Okay, so to start us off, so the wine we have today is a varietal called Muscat, and the region is Alsace from France.
Okay, so this is the eastern French.
Yeah, northeastern bordering
French.
Germany. Fun thing about Alsace is, depending on what period of time,
it's not far from Belgium or the Netherlands, is it not?
it's right. It's on the border. It's right next to Germany. I have a map I can show you. But the culture of Alsace is very German, and yet it's very French, because the Germans have taken it over, the French have taken it over, and they're kind of in this bridge where, depending on who decided to conquer what, so they formulated
a hybrid culture of the two European
power
or states.
And with this particular varietal and the description of the wine label, so we'll kind of start from there. Ways to describe it. For a French wine, it would give you your vintage. Up on top, it'll tell you the AVA, well, the appellation. It tells you appellation, and you're using like AOC, which are the laws and guidelines that they're using in today's
for
society.
that region.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Overall France, but AOC is kind of a level of standards, essentially.
So the French are...
French and the Germans...
I shouldn't joke about how serious people are about things, but it's more about this. This is a very important part of their culture that they take with pride.
Yeah. You had a little sidetrack, but you had the thing called the French paradox, in which you had French people who were living lives eating bread and pasta and cheese and wine all the time, and yet are way more in shape and healthier than Americans may be doing the same diet. But then you also have to look at the fact that those same French people are exercising more, have a much more rigorous lifestyle, are eating smaller portions.
Their culture is very
different, but it's this concept called the French paradox, which you can kind of get more details about. So then we look at the label. Tells me on here when the winery was established, so it was 1658. Again, a lot of these French are very old. Domain essentially is the winemaker. So essentially, think of it as the house. So chateau would be for Bordeaux, and that's really like the estate. But that the domain is kind of the producer. And now it's saying Muscat, and now in Alsace you're allowed to use 3 varietals of Muscat, essentially, like sister clones, I guess. So it's Muscat Noir, which is red, Muscat Blanc, is white, and then another Muscat that I can't think of the name of. It describes the dryness, which is trocken. Trocken in German is dry, essentially bone dry. And the alcohol percentage is 12.5%, so which leads me to knowing that most likely it's going to have a much higher acidity level to this wine.
And that's affected in the production and the the production of the alcohol.
No,
also.
So you get when you're growing a grape or grapes, and certain ripeness levels, grapes retain a lot of water, also retain a lot of sugar.
Mm-hmm.
So finding the balance of when you want to pick. Sometimes the grape, if you pick them early, will have a lot more acidity, and less water, less sugar. And so therefore you only have so much alcohol you can make based off the sugar within the grapes. Now, a much more warm climate, like...
So you're saying sugar and the production of the wine?
Yeah, so normally within this area, it's a lower alcohol wine, so it's within my wealth of knowledge and understanding wine and regions that the wine will have a little bit more acidity.
Mm-hmm.
So on a little note card, I kind of wrote down some...
What I should be looking for?
Yeah, so when looking at a wine, at this point, we're just going to swirl it around, which brings in a little bit of oxygen.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever you're tasting wine, you never want to taste wine with a full glass. I like to do maybe about 1.5 ounce pour, or less. This allows more surface of the wine to interact with oxygen and allow it to breathe and to release those chemical characteristics in which I can smell and pick up with my nose. So usually, if you want the nitty gritty, kind of smell with one nostril. You don't want, sometimes if it's very vibrant and you can smell a lot, I don't have to go to that close to the wine.
Do you mind me asking what the purpose of the one nostril is? Because, I mean, it does sound super bougie.
Yeah. So, I mean, because you're looking, everyone has one side of their brain or one side of their nose that you're way more dominant in, which you can smell.
Okay.
So you pick up whatever side or whatever, and you're just kind of learn. Yeah.
Yeah. And whichever one you smell better with, I guess. Because I know for sometimes I have one nostril that is a little bit more clear than, or vice versa.
So you swirl the wine, and I had a customer that came in the other day. He's like, "Why do you swirl it?" Well, you're just getting the oxygen so I can smell things.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe 1 inch away from.
Okay.
Okay. So I want you to smell your wine.
All right.
And nothing's a wrong answer, nothing's a right answer. Just smell it for a minute, kind of swirl around, and just give me 5 things, and maybe you pick up, and it doesn't have to be characteristics, just maybe things that you're smelling, and you may not even be able to describe what you're smelling, but just try to do your best.
Well, if I'm doing my best to try to figure out what the words are, or what words to use to describe it, the first thing that comes to my mind is its acidity is definitely there. I don't necessarily know how to describe the rest of it, but it's something I've noticed in white wines before. I guess that would be the earthy, or not necessarily earthy, but more of a.
So in white wines, it'd be more, you would say, minerality.
Okay, yeah, that's probably what I'm thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Because unless I have like a actual batch of minerals to compare it and stuff my nose with.
Yeah, it's so weird to be like, oh, it smells minerality. It smells like witch chalk.
Is that right? Is that really what you know?
Yeah. You're like, when was the last time you licked a rock?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so give it a little taste. Now, is there any characteristic in the taste
It's
that you confirm
definitely dry.
that you smelt originally.
Oh, well,
but
yeah.
maybe you couldn't describe based just solely on the nose.
Well, that the skins.
Mm-hmm.
I don't. You said it started with a T.
So tannins. So
Yeah.
you normally won't get tannins out of a white grape.
Okay.
But I'll kind of help.
Let me search for the word to describe it. Because, I mean, clearly neither of us are experts, but you know more than I do.
Now I have to double check.
Mm-hmm.
You could. This one technically doesn't, but I kind of taste a little bit. There's a word. It's called phenolic bitterness.
Okay.
So like when you're drinking beer, it has a little bit of bitter.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of pick up
the bitterness. I think the bitterness is the best way to describe it.
I definitely pick up a little bit now that I kind of had a little bit of the wine,
because
a glass or two.
I taste the sour from the acidity.
Mm-hmm.
And the bitterness comes kind of after that, and it's definitely a drier wine for sure.
So my kind of breakdown. So I would describe the nose would be kind of fruit characteristics. I would say citrus. More specifically in orange.
Yeah, the acid.
I would say
flavor.
more like the rind, or not quite the zest, but more of a rind. Slightly floral. I would say kind of a perfume to like almost like a. If you're saying with orange and citrus, I would use the word like an orange blossom. It definitely shows no signs of oak. Slight petrol. If you kind of really take a really good, and if you smell out of mine,
because you have a little more of a
there's a little more area
ability to get the olfactories going.
You can kind of really take in and get more of that petrol, especially when you kind of know what you're looking for.
So that petrol, what I consider that, and I don't know if this is necessarily the right word to describe it, is the sulfur, almost.
Well, that is another.
Is that
you might
something
be
different?
Picking up. There is. When making wine, you do add sulfites into the wine, help it preserve. Sometimes there's residual sulfur. Sometimes people add too much, and some of that's picked up. I'm not picking up too much, but I'm more accustomed to the petrol.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out if that is maybe the petrol that I'm thinking
that's
of,
your
and I just
brain
have that
really
word
trying
to describe it.
Understand what's happening. Now,
language, it's kind of complex.
On the taste, I would say. I confirm.
Is everybody that egregious with their sips?
Yes. So let me get into that. So when I'm slurping and sound like an ass,
as long as you're aware of it, I'm totally cool.
100%. I get made fun of constantly, but I'm bringing in oxygen in my nose or in my mouth, which is now changing the composition of what I'm tasting in my mouth. I'm now able to taste a few more things, and I get different, for me personally, fruit characteristics within that wine. So for me in the taste, still very confirmed citrus, but I'm also getting some lemon, and maybe more of a ripe lemon.
I think I understand that.
The acidity is medium plus. The alcohol, low. I'd say medium. Very light body, very low finish. It's very clean. And in the book, Alsace Muscat, the fruit characteristic would be yellow peach, which is what we smelled earlier, orange, rind or tangerine. Aromatics, secondary, would be aromatic, orange blossoms, lemon.
I think I'm starting to put it together
Yeah.
when it comes to the orange peel and a little bit of the peach. Now that I'm re-smelling the samples you give me.
Yeah. The earth components would be that petrol, a little bit of a wet stone. It is a medium alcoholed wine.
Is the petrol part of the minerality or no?
No,
Is that
not necessarily. It's a little different. The minerality is more in the taste.
Because there's so many different categories of flavor.
Yeah, and with this one, it's hard to really identify because you're smelling it. Okay, one. Okay, I've identified that. Now there's something else there. You try to focus on that. It's hard to really just kind of go out and say
because it's all you.
Yeah, it's like saying, hey, I'm gonna go run a half marathon today. Well, I've never trained for a half marathon, so how can you tell me?
Well, yeah, and on top of that, I don't even know if there's anything that can truly compare to, or because even you can't record it and share your findings with somebody else. You can only give them the wine, but if they're not trained to hear it, or not hear it, but if they're not trained to taste for it,
yeah,
I guess you can say that for a lot of things in terms of like transferring knowledge in terms of the five senses.
Exactly. And so the reason why I chose this wine particularly,
it is good.
It's a wine that I don't think you would ever want to try. I've only tried Muscat maybe once or twice in my life. It's a interesting wine. It was a great explanation to be able to describe things. I didn't want to use a wine that is so common, Cabernet, Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, Sauv Blanc, but use an outside varietal. I wanted to use an old world style, which tends to have more of the fruits there, but it's more of a lighter. You're picking up more things of an earthy characteristics.
Is that because of the amount of time that they've really put into?
No, it's climate. So,
a lot of this stuff is really dependent on geography.
Yeah, it's geography. Still have.
That's what's interesting to me about the California wines and even American wines in general is the fact that it can't possibly be like anything else in the world because our climate is so particular and our soils are so different, and what we have in this part of the world is not like anything else we would have if we were in Patagonia, and that might be something different versus something that we would have in France, or even Italy, because all their climates are different.
Exactly. So like white fruit, in cooler climates, you tend to pick up more green apples, white peaches, lemons, lime, passion fruit, gooseberry. I have no idea exactly what that is, but you describe it all the time in Sauv Blanc. It's kind of like porn. I don't know it, but I'll know when I see it.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
As we kind of get a little bit more medium climates, melon, oranges, pears, Fuji apples, pineapples, lychee, Bosque pears. As we get into warmer climates, yellow peach, melon, red apples, papaya, mango, banana. These are all fruit characteristics
that you get with a temperature change in the climate.
As a transitional. With red wines, in a cooler climate, you get more of a cranberry, raspberry, cherry, strawberry, pomegranate. Think of your pinots. As we get into more warmer climates, bell pepper, rhubarb, tomatoes. That would be more like your Sangiovese. As well as the cherry aspect. Especially if we're in Napa, Lodi areas. Think of blackberry, plum, raisins, dates, figs, blueberries. These are all things that you would use to describe. I know we were talking and I was trying to find ways you can describe oak aromas. So an oak, depending on the toast, so when they kind of char the inside the barrels, you get a little bit more of these sugars from the oak
Really?
that release these aromatics.
Oh man, I'm so curious how they came up with that idea.
Yeah.
Let's
Does it
fucking burn it?
Yeah. I use it in, spirits and stuff. So does it smell like toast?
Yeah.
Burnt toast or, charred toast, whatever you want to describe it. Does it smell vanilla, which is very synonymous for Chardonnay? Baking spice. Does it smell like cinnamon, nutmeg, allspice? Does it smell like coffee grinds? Does it have a caramel aroma? Does it have a maple syrup aroma? Does it have a smoky characteristic to it?
So do they just keep adding these things as they discover them from different trials and error?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of get a characteristic, from different people that smell things, and I definitely would like to apologize for that airport.
I know we're here.
We're
live in San Diego.
Live in San Diego, it is what it is. And the word you would use, essentially, it's wood sugars, is what's giving you these caramelized aromas. So, like, hemicellulose is caramelized sugars during toasting. This gives you these almond, caramel, from the yeast that's roasted, and sometimes a yeasty smell that comes from roasted coffee. Lactones, which come from the seasoned wood, which can be fruity. Coconut, fresh wood. These are all things you would pick up. You get more vanilla in a medium toast. In a heavy toast, more smoke, clove, char, and a lighter oak. More of these softer, creamier tones. So that's kind of like what I have, for today.
That's fantastic, though.
I think going forth for yourself, for anyone that is interested about wine.
So that's it for today.
Yeah. But my last kind of thing that I kind of want to discuss is, I'm not a somm. The goal of the somms is to bring more people, make it easy. Nobody wants to hide wine
behind a pretentious
curtain. And wine doesn't need to be pretentious.
Everybody deserves to be drunk and merry.
Exactly. But the best thing is go to your local wine bars, tasting rooms, what have you. In San Diego, we have quite a few in Little Italy. If you're listening to this in LA or elsewhere, there's definitely going to be different wine tasting rooms or wine bars.
And people love coming to California anyway. Oh, y'all like the weather.
Try around a bottle.
Yeah.
Take notes. Look online. There's lots of research. And develop a palette of what you know and what you don't like. Even though you can't describe it, you can tell a server or somebody at a wine store, hey, I've bought this in the past. These are things that I liked. These are things I don't like. Can you help me find something that I like? And coming to somebody like myself, that's super helpful because then I know a direction and hopefully I can introduce you to wine and then explain those concepts to you.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. I appreciate you sharing. And hopefully we can do this again and you can teach me some more about another type of bottle and I can keep asking you questions that I don't know anything about.
Absolutely.
All right, until next time.